Now, let's shed light on some of the aforementioned types of thinking. First, let's talk about traditional thinking. Traditional thinking is the kind of thinking that many philosophers or many thinkers describe as the most simple form of thinking, and it does not pursue or it does not seek improvement of the current situation. That's traditional thinking. Another type of thinking is the emotional thinking. In emotional thinking, a person depends on emotional feelings and or personal experience to reach a judgment or to give an opinion or perform an action. In emotional thinking, a person does not depend on logic. It does not depend on a sound methodology or a logically valid approach. He or she only depends on emotional feelings and/or experience, personal experience. Okay, that's why emotional thinking is all the time not accurate or not well sound. Okay. When we move to another type, like for example scientific thinking is a kind of thinking that purely depends on scientific, well-defined scientific information, well-proven scientific information in order to give an opinion or perform an action. So scientific thinking all the time depends on or seeks scientific information, proven information, well-defined information. Another type of thinking, which is analytical thinking. Analytical thinking tries to break down an issue or a topic or ideas into smaller ones, and at the same time it does not give or it does not favor one piece of an idea over the other. Okay. It does not give the opportunity for a superiority of a smaller idea over the other. It's fair. We analyze ideas and we break down them into smaller ones without giving superiority of one of them over the other. Creative thinking always seeks to see or view unfamiliar things in unfamiliar view or unfamiliar attitude, and to create ideas and then transfer these ideas into a design that is capable of being used. When it comes to critical thinking is a mentally disciplined process in which we analyze and we evaluate information gathered by observation in order to give an opinion or perform an action. In 1982, John Dewey, who is a very remarkable figure in the field of education, tried to describe the core of critical thinking by saying critical thinking is a process in which we slow down before we reach a judgment in order to logically make sure of the information or the facts. If we want to differentiate between critical thinking and creative thinking, we have to put them in comparison. For example, first, we can think about or view or see critical thinking as the kind of thinking which depends on analytical thinking. So critical thinking depends on analytical thinking, but creative thinking depends on generative thinking. Also, critical thinking is a kind of thinking which is convergent. So it's a convergent thinking. Critical thinking is convergent thinking because we focus our thinking skills on a problem and we try to figure out the available solutions and we select the ideal solution according to specific conditions. For example, when you think about the reasons behind or the reasons caused a puncture in a car tire. But when it comes to a creative thinking, it's a divergent thinking because we see the problem from different angles, and that creates numerous ideas. For example, when you think about the numerous benefits of an old car tire, that's creative thinking. Critical thinking reaches judgment, but creative thinking suspends judgment. Critical thinking depends on reason and logic, but creative thinking depends on novelty and richness. So we can describe critical thinking as a kind of thinking which is focused, vertical, and linear. But we can describe creative thinking as lateral thinking, diffuse, and associative thinking. But both of critical thinking and creative thinking depend on high order thinking skills. Now, before we study critical thinking skills, we have to answer a very frequent question, which is critical thinking correlated with age? Does age have an impact on critical thinking? So you think about if a person is older, he can be more of a critical thinker. Does age correlate with critical thinking? So a clear answer is no. A clear answer is no. Age does not correlate with critical thinking. Everybody is capable of thinking critically. But the thing we are sure of is that critical thinking skills are not innate. They don't come with the person and they are activated automatically. Critical thinking skills should be learned, should be practiced, and we should train ourselves on how to think critically and how to practice critical thinking skills. So it's a subject of practicing, training, and learning. If you want to know more about the critical thinking skills, so let's give a chance to know a lot of researchers' opinion about critical thinking skills. For example, John Daniels, the two researchers John Daniels and Anne Odell, defined the critical thinking skills as three skills. First, inductive thinking skills. Second, deductive thinking skills. Third, evaluative thinking skills. So Jean Daniels and Anne Odell defined the critical thinking skills as three skills. First, inductive thinking skills. Second, deductive thinking skills. Third, evaluative thinking skills. But according to Watson and Glaser, the two researchers, the two famous researchers, Watson and Glaser, the critical thinking skills can be defined as five critical thinking skills. The first skill is predicting assumptions. The second skill is inference. The third skill is argument evaluation. The fourth skill is interpretation. The fifth skill is deductive reasoning. So the two researchers, Watson and Glaser, defined critical thinking skills again as five thinking skills that form the critical thinking skills. The first one is predicting assumptions. Another one is interpretation. The third one, maybe it's deductive reasoning. Another one is argument evaluation. The fifth one is inference. According to the researcher Peter Fashion, he defined the critical thinking skills as six critical thinking skills. He said that critical thinking skills are first, interpretation. Another skill is explanation. Another skill is analysis. Another skill is evaluation. Another skill is self-regulation. Another skill is inference. So 6 skills: interpretation, explanation, analysis, evaluation, self-regulation, and inference. That is the way the famous researcher Peter Fashion saw the critical thinking skills. Finally, critical thinking skills, according to the famous California standardized test of critical thinking, the critical thinking skills can be defined as being 5 skills. Again, according to California standardized test of critical thinking, the critical thinking skills can be defined as 5 skills. The first one is analysis. The second one is evaluation. The third one is inference. The fourth one is inductive reasoning. The fifth one is deductive reasoning. Again, according to California standardized test, the critical thinking skills can be defined as 5. The first one is analysis. The second one is evaluation. The third one is inference. The fourth one is inductive reasoning. The fifth one is deductive reasoning. That's the end of this chapter. Thank you very much.